Good morning, Math 8 Honors. I hope you guys are doing well. Congratulations on finishing your STAR test. We are going to go over the 1.2b lesson. It is revised, so Mrs. Coulter and I did rewrite this to make sure that it flowed a little bit better, especially as you're doing this as a flip lesson. So if you like to print the blank copy off of the website, you can. If you are comfortable jumping around, that's okay too. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to classify these fractions as close to 0, close to 1/2, or close to 1. And a lot of times, we think about making common denominators or long dividing or making percents, but that's kind of a lot of work to do, like when we have numbers that get this big. So if we go down the line, 1/2, that's going to go in our 1/2 box. 1/9 is going to be close to 0, so we're going to put the 1/9 over there. 5/8, that one can be a little bit trickier, but if we think about 1/2 of 8, that's 4, and that's pretty close, so we're going to keep our 5/8 here. 5/6 we know is pretty close to a whole, and same with 7/8. I do like to cross them out just to make sure I've taken care of all of them. Then we have our 1/5. 5/9 is another one we have to think about, but we know that 1/2 of 9 is 4.5. So we're going to go ahead and put our 5/9 in this box. The 3/8 you can kind of put in two different boxes, but personally I would put it in the middle, because if we go one above 1/2 of 8, we're going to get the 5/8, which we classified here. So this is just going to be one less. And then we have 1/7. And so now that we have these fractions here, we can, if we're going from least to greatest, which is what it asks for in question number 2, we can go through and just look at each box to make it a little bit easier. So if we're looking at 1/9, 1/5, 1/7, we know the 1 is the same on all of them if we were to shade those. But if we're cutting something up into 9 pieces, that's going to make the 1/9 the very smallest. And then we would have the 1/7, and then we would have the 1/5. So already we were able to put 3 fractions in order without doing any common denominator work. So looking at this middle one, we know that 3/8 is just under 1/2. And it's in fact the only one that's just under 1/2. Then we know we have our 1/2, and then again we're stuck comparing the 5/8 versus 5/9. If you think about it in a picture, which is what we covered in 1.0b, we know that 9 sections is going to result in smaller shaded sections. So 5/9 would be less shading than 5/8. And now we're down to the last 2. If you're uncomfortable with those numbers, it's fine. You can make that out of 24. If you were to do that, you would be comparing 5/6 times 4/4, which would give us 20/24. And then we have the 7/8 times 3/3 would give us 21/24. And that's just one way to do it. If you want to multiply the 6 and the 8 together, you can do that as well. But this is telling us that our 5/6 is the smaller one and that 7/8 is the last one. Okay, so taking a look at number 3. Number 3 can be tricky just because it's dealing with negatives. So looking at the string of numbers, we're going to do the same thing that we did before. So our negative 1/2 is still going to fall in our close to negative 1/2 box. Our negative 4/28, personally, I don't love this because it's not reduced. I would reduce this to negative 1/7 first and then classify it. Our negative 3/5, 1/2 of 5 is 2.5, so 3 is pretty close, so I would stick that in the middle. Then we have negative 2/7. We know that 1/2 of 7 is 3.5, so that's not too far off. 5/14, same thing. I would personally put this in the middle. Then we have negative 2/11. We have negative 4/5, and we have negative 7/9. And if you prefer to put these on a number line, you can, and that would be another way that you could take a look at the numbers. So On this one, again, we're looking from least to greatest. So we're looking at, when we're looking in the negatives, we're looking at what's the furthest away from 0. So the furthest away from 0 is going to be our negative 4/5. And then we have our negative 7/9. And now we're dealing with the ones in the middle. So thinking about the fact that, again, it is negatives. We know 3/5 is about 60%, and that one is the one that's going to be the most negative out of all of these. So we will have negative 3/5 and negative 1/2. And now we're just really looking at those two. If we were to change the 2/7 to 4/14, we would be able to see that the negative 5/14 is more negative. So our negative 5/14 will go here. Then we have our negative 2/7. Looking at the last two, we have negative 2/11 and negative 1/7. So this is a good one to kind of go back and practice and look at again because of the negatives. So taking a look at number 5. So number 5 says to plot each fraction on the number line below. So we've got to figure out what's going on with all of these numbers in here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that means everything here are tenths. So we have 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. Now I'm intentionally not reducing them on the number line, and that's just so you can see the pattern of what's happening. And then going backwards, we're going to have the negatives. It's very important with number lines that you label the scale that you're using. The numbers should go underneath and not on top. Notice also the order that they're going in, especially on the negative side. And now we can kind of go back and take a look at the problem. So I'm going to be plotting A in green, and then we'll do B in a different color. So for 1/2, that's the same thing as 5/10. So we're going to have this fraction here. If we look at 1/3, we know that 1/3 from what we did in class last week is 33.3 repeating percent. So that's just a little bit bigger than our 3/10. So we're going to put it to the right of our 3/10. 3/4, you know, is 75%. So that's going to fall in the middle of your 7 and 8. 2/5 is the same thing as 4/10. So we're going to plot a point there. Now would be a great time to hit pause to see if you can do the other side on your own. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's take a look and see how you did. So you want to make sure that you're looking at the numbers and seeing how they're going. And then C actually says to compare the fractions using less than, greater than, or equal to. So just as a reminder from last year, if it's facing this way, whoops, we're looking at less than. And if it's facing this way, it's greater than. And that's because we read from left to right. Okay. So looking at 1/2 and 1/3, we know that 1/2 is greater than 1/3. It's further to the right on your number line. Looking at the negative 1/2 and negative 1/3, this is going to be less than because negative 1/2 is more negative than the negative 1/3. Looking at the 2/5 and the 3/4, 2/5 is also smaller than 3/4. And looking at the negative 2/5 and the negative 3/4, negative 2/5 is bigger because negative 2/5 is closer to the 0 on the number line. So it says, what differences do you observe when comparing the fractions in part C? And so what we're hopefully looking at is what's going on with the negatives. So the negative fractions use the opposite inequality sign than the positive fractions. Okay, so looking at E, it says, how does the number line help you determine which number is greater? And so we want to think about direction. And so our negatives are to the left of 0 and our positives are to the right. But their pattern holds the entire time. So the number furthest to the right are the larger numbers. And that's going to be the end of part 1. So make sure you go ahead and look at part 2. If you need a break in between, that'd be great. And I will see you on the other side. Thanks.